The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept and hold it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata. Good afternoon, everybody. Today is the second day of the February 2025 session at Mountain Gate. And it is the second day. It is, in many ways, the toughest day of session, where a lot of our challenging places get revealed to us. It's easy in day-to-day life to kind of go along and have a lot of patterns in place that get us through the day that we're not really super aware of, that help us in many ways avoid things that are going on in the subconscious, avoid things that seem painful, search out things that feel good, at least temporarily. That's our normal way of being. And when we come to sesshin, those patterns all become visible to some degree. The first day it can be easier to dive into the practice, it seems. It's almost like there's a honeymoon period to sesshin, and that is the first day, where it's different. We're engaged in the practice. It's amazing to be able to sit the whole day and just focus on our breathing as much as possible. And often we feel more let go the first day. And then the second day, all that stuff that was there under the surface that we weren't seeing comes up so we can see it. And this is a process that happens over and over again. Those of us who've been to many sesshin, in many ways, this particular pattern very commonly surfaces one way or the other, whether it's the second day or not. That's sort of what practice does. It helps us recognize patterns within ourselves where we're keeping ourselves caught. And it's not fun to open to those patterns. They're there for a reason, to keep us from feeling the pain that they're trying to cover up and trying to keep us from seeing. And they can be pretty deeply ingrained. Sometimes when people have had a really challenging upbringing, or even if they haven't, lots of people have pretty deeply ingrained habit patterns, but it can be especially frightening to open up to what's underneath those patterns. When there's trauma, of course, it can be very frightening. There can be a lot of anger as well, opening up to. Regardless, though, there's at base fear of death. That is what primarily we human beings try to avoid opening to, because our self-identity that we've been living with for most of us decades feels threatened by practice, because we see the sort of ineptitude of the identity. It doesn't really do much for us. It seems like it's going to help us out, avoiding pain and trying to just focus on what feels good, pleasure. But it's actually not very good at that. And for a lot of us, what happens with the identity is it creates these negative patterns of thinking that just sort of run on a loop. I don't remember the number, but it's a pretty low number of like actual thoughts we have each day. For many of us, we're thinking the same thought over and over again throughout the day, the same series of thoughts kind of playing on a loop. And it can be negative. It's a negative self-talk often that's running around in our subconscious, wreaking havoc. And that's a lot of times a part of the identity, not always. I believe that Dalai Lama, I don't know if this is true, I heard a story that the Dalai Lama was giving a talk and somebody asked him a question about negative self-image, and the translator, I don't know what the translator said, but the Dalai Lama basically was like, well, what's that? Like, there's no word for it in the Tibetan language. So whether it is truly a Shangri-La and nobody there has a negative self-image or not, they didn't have the word for it. I suspect there are people there who do have had some negative experiences and developed some negative self-talk around it. oftentimes when little kids experience negative things, especially if they're hurt by someone close to them, one way or the other, emotionally or physically or whatever, bullied at school, little kids try to make sense of that by turning that negativity inward. If they're bad kids, then what's happening makes sense, and it doesn't make sense otherwise. So that's one way to look at how this negative self-identity takes root. Early in childhood when we're young, trying to make sense of the world when the world is not necessarily treating us with all the kindness that all human beings, deserve. And that can come up during sesshin, and it is, as I mentioned, not fun. It's very painful. It can feel like sitting on a cushion of needles. And yet that's exactly what we have to do. We have to allow ourselves to just sink right down into that painful zafu. Zafu sounds like torture. But what it really is a path to freedom. The more we can open to these painful patterns within ourselves, allow ourselves to feel every single little prick on that pincushion, and really open to it, then what happens is, over time, those needles disappear, and that pain decreases. And we see sooner or later that actually we're causing our own pain, but it can take a while to see that. And at a certain point, there's a choice to be made, where once we see that we're creating that pain, then we can choose to stop it. But it takes some practice to get there. And even when we do get there, we get to that point where we can choose. And we do choose. We choose not to cause suffering for ourselves. We choose to open to something deeper and clearer and brighter and free. When we choose that over and over again, as patterns start to arise and we decide, no, I don't want to do that anymore. And then they slowly just kind of ebb down into nothing. And then they hardly come up anymore. But then sometimes we think we've gotten past a certain pattern, and then something will come up, and it's like we get knocked sideways, and old patterns that we thought we had moved past, or had learned not to create anymore, come up again. And it can be very discouraging. It can be frustrating. It can feel like, especially if we made a choice to go into some environment or situation that brought it back up again, the regret can come up. But really, it's just part of being human. We go along, we make the best choices we can, and things happen too, whether we choose it or not. A lot of people are experiencing a lot of fear, a lot of anger, a lot of confusion, a lot of agitation, anxiety, you name it right now. It's all happening. A lot of people are feeling this way. And we all feel each other's difficulties, whether we're aware of it or not. We are one being. And so when people are having a hard time, we're aware of it. We're aware of what's going on. We're having a hard time. And so it can really amp up the level of difficulty. It's like being able to let go of your patterns on an easy sailing day, where the wind is just perfect. You're just sailing along. You hardly have to do anything. The sails are just perfect the way they are. You're just enjoying the breeze. Negative thoughts start to come up and you decide, well, I'm just not, I don't want to do that anymore. And so that's one level of letting go of those patterns and living in a more free way. And then our boat runs into a storm, and the waves are swamping the boat. You have to do a lot to keep the boat upright. It's frightening. And in that moment, the same thing. We open to what's happening. We accept the full catastrophe of it. Feel it down to the tiniest little iota of fear. Like Sogen's one drop, right? It's just that one last drop. We feel it so completely, so totally, that it dissolves and we dissolve, and there's nothing there to have a problem. It's true on the deepest levels. It's true on more shallow levels. It is there for us to open to, no matter what's happening, even if the scariest, hurricane comes along and we're on just a little boat, then we open to fear of death, because that's what it is. Ultimately, we open to that so fully. So fully. We see the edges of it, find the edges of it in the first place. That can feel like a challenge. Really, there are no edges to it, but these are sort of analogies to explain. Another kind of, no, I was about to go into another analogy, but basically you want to open to the full experience of the fear so completely that it disappears, dissolves. It's not something you can predict or make happen. It can happen in the midst of what feels like a terrible storm. But it's just the process of opening to what is in each moment, through the body, through the breath, feeling that out breath so completely right to the end of that breath, and then keeping on going. I've heard about natural divers who dive for pearls. I think it's in Southeast Asia or the South Pacific or both. And they don't have any equipment. They're natural divers. They have learned how to push their capacity well beyond where most human beings can go. And they just dive and they dive and they dive and they dive. It's like that in practice. We dive way past where the light ends. If you've ever seen like videos of the undersea, there's light up to a certain point that filters down, and you can see a lot. And then below that, there's a quality of blue. And then below that, there's just total darkness, and we dive down into that darkness. And we're searching for we don't know what, and it's frightening, potentially. It may not feel frightening. At a certain point, fear comes up, so I don't want to scare people. I'm just saying. At a certain point, what we realize is that there's fear underlying that. That is the shadow that keeps us from seeing things as they really are. So the more we can open to that, the better off we are, the more free we are. If we dive down into our breath, into our practice, and a little bit of fear comes up and we're like, oh, what's that? And then it's gone instantly. That's fine, because we are processing it. The goal is, if there is a goal, you just open as much as you can in each moment. And what happens is over time, that resistance to the fear of the fear wears down. And then sooner rather than later, we open to something totally different and totally unexpected. The Master Hakuin's chant and praise of Zen is something that we have chanted here before. We don't chant it every day. But the last verse is really great. How vast is the heaven of boundless samadhi, how bright and transparent the moonlight of wisdom. What is there outside us? What is there we lack? Nirvana is openly shown to our eyes. This earth where we stand is the pure lotus land, and this very body, the body of Buddha. So this earth where we stand is the pure lotus land. This very body, the body of Buddha. So what is there outside us? What is there we lack? Really seeing truly, truly, truly that there's nothing outside us that can ever bring any type of peace or fulfillment of any kind, which sounds drastic and very countercultural, but very true. When we can see that there's nothing truly outside us that can bring any lasting satisfaction or freedom, that's really the start of our practice. Because up until then, it's possible to just kind of dip our toes in and just like, yeah, I can sit for a little while in this water and check it out. And I feel better when I get out of the water and walk around, and, that's fine. But then we keep on kind of doing the things that our identity thinks will help us feel better, like going to movies, getting ice cream, going to work. I mean, I'm not saying don't do these things. We need to do these things. That's part of daily life. That's functioning. But if we expect these things to bring us true fulfillment, true joy, true freedom, that's all internal. So no matter what our circumstances, whether we're going to movies, getting ice cream, going to work, whatever it is, we're free. We're free to live the way that we need to live in a way that brings joy, freedom, and harmony and healing to all people. Hakuin's grandfather in Zen was Shiro Munan Zenji, and he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, if you die before you die, you don't die when you die. And then everything you do is good. So what he means by that is, once you've seen deeply enough and you've let go fully enough, the long maturation, the 360-degree practice Roshi's talking about, then you naturally choose what's helpful, what brings freedom to others, what can really help with healing the world. But until that point, if the identity is driving us at all, then we tend to make choices that are more geared towards serving that self-identity, which unfortunately only just brings more entrapment and suffering, because it's all a realm of ideas. It's a jail of ideas, really. Thinking that the identity is who we are, when really seeing beyond that identity is where the freedom lies. And until we see that there's nothing outside us, not a single situation, circumstance, place, person, or whatever that will bring us that joy and freedom, until we see that, we're not really going to be able to see deeply enough to live in a truly profoundly free way. It's that recognition and understanding that motivates us and allows us to really dive down into that dark, deep ocean and find that freedom that comes from letting go. As where, is when you do scuba diving, which I have not done, I know you are tethered to the boat and you have oxygen. Well, you have oxygen tanks sometimes, and sometimes people are like connected to the boat. I assume this is part of it. Let's just go with it for the analogy. So you're diving off the boat, going down deep, and you've got your oxygen mask, and you're tethered to the boat. And what happens if you let go of all of that? That's the quality of what can happen when you're sitting. It feels like you're letting go of that oxygen mask. It feels like you're letting go of that life-saving tether to the boat. But what happens when you do that is this incredible freedom and true life, the true life that who we really are, what we're really living here on earth that we're not seeing because we're unfortunately sort of running around doing what our identity thinks is the best thing to do to maintain happiness and safety. There's a poem that Dogen quotes, a poem by, there's a Dogen quote in Moon in a Dewdrop that says, "Nothing to depend upon, this or any universe. Night falls, and the moon floods the water with light. Within the dragon's jaws, I find many exquisite jewels. Nothing to depend upon, this or any universe. Night falls, and the moon floods the water with light. Within the dragon's jaws, I find many exquisite jewels." So I hope this has been helpful. I hope that final imagery is inspiring. It inspires me to keep going as deep as I can. So let's stop now and recite the 4 vows.